This is the new 2023 Lexus RX, and soon you'll be seeing it everywhere. This is a fully redesigned version of the RX, which has been one of the most popular luxury SUVs in existence for 25 years now. Well, now there's a brand new one, and today I'm going to take you on a thorough tour of it. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website for cool cars from the modern era with free listings. You can list your cool car for free and pay no fees and auction it on Cars and Bids. And we've had some great sales recently, including this Toyota Land Cruiser sold for almost $50,000, a great 200 series. This Jeep Wrangler Rubicon with under 20,000 miles brought $36,000, and this fantastic BMW M5 with a gorgeous individual bright red color sold for almost $38,000. If you're looking to buy or sell a cool enthusiast car from the modern era, Cars and Bids is the place to do it, with daily auctions and great selection at carsandbids.com. So let's talk RX. The RX originally made its debut in the late 1990s, and it quickly became a mainstay, one of the most popular luxury SUVs in America. The new 2023 model is the 5th generation version, and it has a lot of updates and changes over the old RX, and today I'm going to show them to you. Now, I can't drive the new Lexus RX yet, as this is a pre-production model and it was only just announced, but I can show you all the quirks and features and take you on a thorough tour. So let's get started. Alright, I'm going to start the quirks and features of the new RX with a little overview of exactly what this vehicle is, and I'm going to start with powertrains. There are 4 different available powertrains in the new RX, which is a pretty big number, and it's a reflection of just how popular this vehicle is. 4 powertrains, there's basically something for everyone, and Lexus sees the return in developing 4 separate powertrains because they figure all of them will find buyers. So, the base model is called the RX 350, as it has been for years, and it uses a turbo 4-cylinder, about 275 horsepower. Now from there you can step up to the hybrid model, which is called the RX 350H. That uses a hybrid version of that same 4-cylinder with just under 250 horsepower. Then from there you can step up to the RX 450H Plus. That is a plug-in hybrid model. Lexus has not yet released any details about that powertrain, how much power, how much range it will have on pure electric, but it's coming soon, and that will be the plug-in hybrid model, the 3rd powertrain offered. Then you can step up to this, the top of the line, the performance version, which is called the RX 500H. This also uses a turbo 4-cylinder, amazingly, although it's made it to a hybrid system for some big power. Lexus says 367 horsepower and 409 pound-feet of torque, which is pretty impressive. And Lexus also says the entire powertrain drivetrain has been optimized for improved grip and handling and better acceleration. The result is 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds. And like I said, over 400 pound-feet of torque in a Lexus RX. This is really the first time Lexus has gone down the true performance route with the RX. There were F-Sport models before, but it was largely cosmetic. Now you have this RX 500H that really does have some big power and some impressive performance numbers for one of these. And interestingly, Lexus is really doubling down on the whole performance thing. In addition to offering this RX 500H with some pretty strong numbers, they're also doing 2 different F-Sport models. There will be an RX F-Sport Performance and an RX F-Sport Handling. So you can choose whether you want your handling-focused RX or your all-out performance-focused model, which is crazy to imagine from a Lexus RX, but that's sort of the direction they're going with this. Now, interestingly, in spite of all that, there is no 6-cylinder option in this vehicle. It's all 4-cylinder powertrains. Although we don't yet have confirmed details about the plug-in hybrid, you can kind of assume it probably won't be a 6-cylinder either. So despite adding performance and excitement and F-Sport models, 6 cylinders are gone for the new RX, which kind of seems to be the way the industry is heading. But anyway, a few more general overview things to note about the new RX before I move on to more detailed quirks and features. For one thing, the wheelbase in the new RX is about 2.5 inches longer than in the old RX, but the overall length remains remains the same. Lexus tells me the added wheelbase goes entirely inside the car into rear seat room and additional cargo room, so passengers and cargo will have more space in the new RX. Now, one thing Lexus hasn't yet announced is whether they're going to continue to offer the RXL, which was a long wheelbase, sort of stretched 3-row version of the RX that was offered on the outgoing generation. For now, Lexus has only shown and announced the 2-row standard wheelbase version, so I guess we'll find out later if they plan to continue with the RXL. Lexus has also not yet announced pricing for the new RX, so I can't share that with you yet, but they say the new RX will come out sometime this fall, and of course pricing will likely be available soon before it comes out in the next few months. One thing Lexus did note is that this new RX rides on a brand new platform used globally on a lot of vehicles, and it helps save weight. Lexus says the new RX is down about 200 pounds compared to the outgoing model, which is a pretty significant figure in the car world, and it'll likely help with fuel economy and handling nimbleness. And next up, we move inside the new RX. There are a couple ways to get inside. Obviously, you can just use the key, which is normal and looks like this and is not really all that remarkable. But Lexus is also offering the new RX with a digital key, which is this. It's basically a hotel room key looking thing you can keep in your wallet that can give you access to the car in case you lose your regular key, or if you just don't want to carry it with you. If it's a little cumbersome, you're doing some athletic event, just carry around the digital key instead, which is a neat idea. But anyway, next we climb inside the new RX, and there is quite a bit to cover in here, although the most important and prominent change to the new RX is the fact that the infotainment system is now a touchscreen. That's a big deal because the outgoing model used Lexus's remote touch controller with a mouse paddy type situation that honestly nobody ever really liked or warmed up to. It was probably my least favorite infotainment system of all, but that is now gone. And instead you have a pretty good touchscreen, actually. 14-inch center touchscreen, standard across the board on all RX models, and frankly, it's tremendously easy to use with smartphone-like responses, and it's intuitive. You got a row of icons over on the side that let you choose where you want to go, and from there, big menus, big screen, you can pretty much figure everything out without like some complicated owner's manual. It's an excellent infotainment system, and it's a huge upgrade for the RX compared to the confusing, confounding, annoying remote touch controller in the old one. Now, it's worth pointing out there are some interesting quirks and features within the infotainment system I should mention. One drawback, probably the only thing I don't really like about it, is the fact that you can't do a split screen situation. So you can have the map up, as you can see, taking up the huge screen, or you can have the stereo up and then you're looking at the radio, but you can't see both at once. A lot of other automakers offer that ability, especially in a screen this size, but Lexus, Toyota, they don't for some reason, which is a little bit disappointing considering the size of the screen. The other rather odd feature of this screen is the 360-degree camera system, which you can access by pressing this little view button here in the center. You push that and the camera system comes on, but it's bizarre. You can see it shows sort of around the car and it's rotating. The weird part is you cannot control the rotation. So you can't like move it left, right, up, down like in virtually every other car. Instead, it rotates at its own speed, and the only thing you can do is pause it. Or you can change the angle, but you still can't go left, right, up, down. It's so strange. Lexus and Toyota use this in most of their models, and I find it to be absolutely bizarre and definitely not one of the class-leading 360 camera systems. But other than those little things, this infotainment system really is world-class and very competitive with other rivals. It also offers a fantastic benefit you don't often see in other vehicles. Specifically, you can drop the rear seats from the screen. You go in here and you can tap here and the rear seats will automatically fold down. Of course, you can also use this screen to put them back up again if you want to, which is frankly just as useful. You don't realize how convenient it is to be able to drop or put up back seats from the front until you have that feature, and then it's really beneficial. You're picking your kids up and you forgot that you put the seats down, boom, you just tap on your screen, they go back up. You don't have to get out, pull on levers, that sort of thing. It's nice to have that. Not many rivals do, but the RX does. But as good as the center screen is, I have to say I'm not quite as thrilled about the gauge cluster setup in the new RX, or frankly most of the new Lexus models. You can see it's basically a full screen gauge cluster, which is nice. A lot of rivals offer that as well, but you don't have a lot of configurability here. In fact, only the bottom center part of this full screen really can change and show various different things, which is disappointing. It will show your music and it'll show direction, that sort of thing, but you can't get like a full screen map like you can with Audi, Mercedes-Benz. Even BMW offers a larger map than this. And I don't quite understand the point of going to a gauge cluster screen if you're not going to be able to fully exploit it and let people change to see exactly the view they want. The Audi virtual cockpit and Mercedes-Benz MBUX definitely have a leg up over the Lexus system and its sort of smaller, less configurable screen. Now, with that said, you do get a heads-up display in the new RX, as you can see here, which adds a little bit more information and doesn't make the configurability of that gauge screen quite as important, but I'd still like to see more capability from that gauge cluster screen. One thing worth pointing out, though, that gauge screen does change itself around as you change drive modes. You can see right now I'm in sort of a comfort-oriented mode, but I go into sport, and then it becomes like this, sportier, more aggressive, more red, which is kind of neat. I just wish it could do more changes than just that. Interestingly, one thing the gauge cluster does offer is the ability to see what gear you're in when you're driving. You can see that here. This is something that nobody cares about in an automatic car, especially a Lexus RX, to see the current gear they're in, but it's available. It's weird that Lexus offers that, but you can't get some of the other stuff I would love to see in the screen, like more configurability. But anyway, next up, moving on from the screens and the technology, the other standout item worth talking about in this interior is just how nice it is. This interior is really beautiful, especially for a vehicle in this class, sort of the mid-size luxury crossover. They don't always get the nicest stuff, but this one seems like it does. It has gorgeous materials, gorgeous layout everywhere you look. Some examples, the seats, beautiful red perforated leather with little Alcantara trim on the sides, looks very nice. And over on the door panel, you have this sort of textured Alcantara next to the speakers, which also looks great, really high quality. And then the center console, you have this nice pinstriping in lieu of cheaper looking piano black trim, looks great here, and it also translates over to the dashboard. You have a little bit more of it. But frankly, just generally overall, not much cheap plastic in this interior. In fact, virtually none. It's just nice stuff everywhere you look, including everywhere you feel and touch. Everything looks good and high quality. Fantastic interior for a vehicle in this segment. Now, with all that said, again, I should remind you that Lexus has not yet announced pricing for the new RX, and I am sitting in the top level model, the RX 500H at the top of the lineup and the F Sport version. So for all I know, this could be zillions of dollars, but it probably won't be. And frankly, if this version looks this nice, it foretells good things about other versions of the new RX. I guess we'll see as they start to trickle out. But anyway, some quirks and features in here. There are a surprising amount of them. For one thing, the doors. You don't have a traditional door handle in here. Instead, to get out, you push on this little lever. Push it in, and then it electronically pops open, and then you climb out from there, which is unusual and very different from most other mid-size luxury SUVs. Now, in case you're worried about the door popping mechanism breaking and trapping you inside your RX, it's worth pointing out you can also pull that door popper, pull it forward, and then it operates like a traditional mechanical door handle, and you can just climb out. But why would you do that when you can pop it open electronically? Also, another cool quirk in the new RX is the center console lid. You can see it here, nothing too unusual. Press a button and it opens up from the driver's side. Seems fairly standard. But the cool part is you press a button over on the passenger side and it opens up from the passenger side as well. So it's like this magic center console that can open from whichever side you want to see it on, which I think is actually kind of a cool touch. Next up, another interesting quirk of this interior is the climate vents. You can see, for example, the center vents here, and they're kind of odd in the sense that you have these vents, but then there's silver trim going around the vent, but not the entire vent. And so you have this little switch you can use to move the vent around below the silver trim, and it moves part of the vent both below the trim and above the trim. It's kind of strange. The climate vents are rimmed in this silver trim, but it didn't actually rim the entire climate vents, which is odd design. And you actually have that on all the climate vents. Over on the driver's side, same deal. It's kind of split in two, and the little switches on the lower half. And the same deal over on the passenger side, where you have like a little piece of trim kind of splitting the climate vent, which, again, odd design, but that's what they've done here. Also worth pointing out, another cool touch in this interior is the cabin lighting mounted on the ceiling. To turn it on, you just tap. and then it goes on, and you tap it again, and then it sort of gradually turns itself off in a luxurious manner. These cool little tappy lights are kind of nice to play with, and I'm seeing them in more and more vehicles, especially luxury vehicles like this one. Now, speaking of tappy things, one disappointment in the new RX, it has a full panoramic sunroof, which is very nice. It opens up. That's all great, but it doesn't have the instant opaque sunroof design that Toyota is offering in the Venza, which is sort of like Toyota's version of the RX to a degree. In that vehicle, you can just tap a switch and then the sunroof instantly is frosted over and you can't see out of it. Tap it again, and then it is instantly clear. It's a very cool feature to see, but unfortunately, Toyota hasn't offered it in any other models, sadly, including the new RX, where I thought it might make an appearance. For now, it seems to be only in the Venza. But anyway, next up, another nice feature in the new RX is the rear view mirror. You can see right now it is simply a mirror, but if you pull on this switch, then it becomes a camera instantly, which is a feature I absolutely love, because then you're not like looking through your rear passengers or your headrest or the cargo you have in back in order to see out. Instead, the camera is mounted on the back of the car and it skips all of that. There are no obstructions to seeing what's behind you, which is really nice and a huge safety feature that more and more cars are implementing, and I'm happy to see that, and I'm happy to see it in the new RX. By the way, one other cool quirk and/or feature of the new RX, if you're driving along and you put the windows down, it's a nice day, and then you park the car and turn it off, the gauge cluster will actually let you know that you've left a window open, which is a really cool idea. Usually you don't discover that until you're getting out of the car or walking away, or you come back and it rained and your interior is all wet, but here it tells you in the gauge cluster to make sure you're aware that you've left your window down, which is a nice idea. But anyway, next we move on to the back seat of the new RX, and I have to say there is clearly more space in back here. You have really excellent rear seat room, especially for a mid-size crossover like this one. Excellent room for legs, for knees, for head. You got a lot of space in back, which is nice. A lot of people use these RXs as family vehicles, and so having good rear seat room is a big deal, and this one certainly does. And just like up front, the rear of the new RX is really high quality. You get great materials back here. Once again, same red perforated leather, which looks nice, and same red Alcantara accents on the leather, which is also very beautiful. Same deal on the door panel. Once again, you have this textured Alcantara, which looks good, not just in the front, but they carry that over to the back too to really enhance the look of this car in back. And speaking of luxury back here, here's something pretty cool. This car has heated rear seats, which is nice, but more and more vehicles are offering that, but it also offers cooled rear seats, ventilated seats for the back seats, which you don't really see outside of Bentley and Rolls-Royce. I'm not seeing that very often, but the new RX is offering it, at least in this version. Now, you also have rear seat climate control, as you can see here. You can adjust the temperature back here and have your own rear seat climate zone, which is nice. And you have two different USB-C ports back here next to all the climate controls, which is obviously good for rear seat passengers charging their devices. Also worth pointing out back here, you have 3 seats, of course, 2 on the sides, 1 in the middle, but the backrest part of the middle seat can also fold down, and then it becomes, well, you can see a cup holder will fold out from there, which is nice to have, or you can also have a little storage compartment, which is also nice to see, so that adds a little bit more practicality in back. Also worth pointing out, with the rear seat in this vehicle, you have the same door handles in back as you had up front, which means not handles at all, instead little switches that you push, and then they pop open and electronically open the door. And once again, just like up front, if your door popper fails, you can always pull on this latch, and then it will mechanically open the door just like an old school, boring, traditional door handle if you can't use the electronic popper. But anyway, next we move around to the back of the new RX, and the first thing you notice back here is the tail light, which I have on right now, and obviously you can see very distinctive look, this cool light bar that goes across the entire car and sort of gets thin in the middle and gets wider on the sides. It's a neat look, and the sides also have this sort of cool line design that makes it a little bit more aggressive and daring. It's a very distinctive and more modern upgrade to the new RX compared to the outgoing model. Now, as for the turn signals, nothing particularly unusual or cool here. Some automakers are doing like cool sweeping turn signals or designs or whatever. You don't have that in the RX, just fairly standard looking turn signals. Obviously, they're all LEDs, but nothing cool or crazy or exciting here. One interesting thing worth noting, on the back of the new RX, you don't have the Lexus emblem anymore. The Lexus L is gone from back here. You do have Lexus written out in the center directly above the light bar, but that Lexus L that's been a mainstay in RX and all Lexus models for years is not on this vehicle, which is kind of an interesting direction change for Lexus. But next up, we open the tailgate, we get into the cargo area, and you can see this cargo area is quite large. Like I said, 2.5 inches longer the new RX compared to the old one, and that was all in rear seat room and cargo space, and this cargo area is big, especially for a mid-size crossover like this one. Decent sized cargo area, a lot of floor space. You do have some of the upper space stolen a little bit by the design of the car, sort of this slanting rear end. So if you want to load some huge, tall item, you might not have space, but generally speaking, pretty good cargo room in the new RX. Now, it is worth pointing out you don't have any space under the floor in the new RX. There's no additional cargo space there because you got a spare tire instead, but it's not really necessary since there's so much cargo space above. Now, a couple of other interesting items worth noting in the cargo area. For one, you can drop the rear seats automatically back here. You have a couple of switches you can see left and right. You press them, and then the seats automatically drop down, which is nice to have. A lot of 3-row vehicles have that to drop the 3rd row of seats, but you don't always see it on 2-row vehicles like this one, but you have it here. And of course, these switches can also raise the seats back up automatically as well. Press them the other direction, and the seats automatically lift up and go back into place, which is nice. Now, also worth pointing out back here, power outlets. You get 2 of them. On one side, a cigarette lighter style outlet, which can be nice. On the other side, a standard household style outlet, which is also nice. Good to have power in the cargo area for all sorts of different reasons, and they've got that here in the new RX. But anyway, next up, let's talk design. Design, appearance, styling of the new RX. I have the outgoing version of the RX behind me. You can see it here. This is the old RX. And I was present when Lexus debuted this vehicle and launched it to journalists originally back in August 2015 in Portland. I was there, I remember it well, and I also remember thinking it looked weird. And I've always felt that about that version of the RX. I kind of thought the design would grow on me in time because it's such a popular vehicle. I figured I'd see so many of them, I'd eventually kind of get used to it. But that never happened. I always thought it looked weird. I still think it looks weird, and I never really understood why there were so many angles and cuts and lines. I just thought it was radically overstyled. The new version eliminates most of that, honestly. The new version sort of looks like the old version, except attractive. They've kind of smoothed out the lines, they've modernized everything, and they haven't gone for such a thoroughly overstyled direction with just too much visual stuff on the outside of the car. Frankly, I think the new model is a big step up over the old one, which I really never thought was a particularly attractive car. I think they've done much better in the new version. And frankly, looking at it from just about every angle, you can see it's a cleaner, more cohesive, more simple design that just doesn't get as daring as the outgoing model, which never really needed to be daring because it's a Lexus RX. It's not really its purpose. This version, definitely more attractive, simpler, and I like that. And 2 interesting design details to especially point out on the new RX. For one thing, the grille. I got the new RX F Sport right here. Next to me is the old RX F Sport. And you can see in the old one, the grille is actually larger. It's huge. It goes all the way up to the line where the hood opens, and it's quite big, and that got a lot of criticism for Lexus, these massive grills. Well, in the new one, they've actually gone the other direction and made the grille smaller. And you can see this new one, the grille only comes up sort of halfway up the Lexus badge, and it's smaller than the old one. Above that, you can see the grille sort of fades into a body-colored panel, which then goes up the rest of the way. The grille has actually gotten smaller. And like I said, Lexus got a lot of criticism for this grille, and I wonder if making the grille a little smaller on this model is finally an admission that the grille's got a little too big, and they're starting to go the other direction at least a little bit. Also worth pointing out, the new RX, just like the old RX, has this kind of unusual swoopy line near the back of the car on the side. You can see it here. It's intended to look like it's a big window, but it isn't. On the inside, you can see the window is only a small portion of this line. It's really just mostly for style, but frankly, I think it looks good. It's distinctive for the RX, and it helps tie the side windows into the rear window, but just worth pointing out, they are keeping that, again, distinctive RX design detail on the new model model as well. And so that's the new 2023 Lexus RX. This isn't exactly the most enthusiast-oriented, exciting vehicle around, but it's still a big deal with massive sales and huge popularity. And soon you'll be seeing the new RX everywhere. And when you do, now you will know all of its quirks and features.